The unwanted inheritance. The alarm pierced through Commander Jackson Reeves's restless sleep like a plasma bolt through hull plating. He rolled off his narrow bunk aboard the cargo freighter Stellar Wanderer, his body moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd spent too many years expecting the worst. The ship's emergency lighting cast everything in harsh red shadows as he stumbled toward the bridge, pulling on his jacket over a faded military undershirt. "Nexus, report!" he barked at the ship's AI, his voice still rough with sleep and the lingering effects of another nightmare about the Kepler campaign. "Incoming priority transmission from Galactic Administrative Services," the AI responded with its characteristic deadpan delivery. "Legal designation. Mandatory compliance notice. I've taken the liberty of brewing coffee, Commander. You'll need it." Jackson frowned as he slumped into the pilot's chair, accepting the steaming mug that emerged from a wall dispenser. The Stellar. Wanderer was a decades-old freight hauler he'd bought with his military pension. Nothing fancy, but it was his. He ran solo cargo runs between the outer colonies, avoiding crowds, avoiding complications, and most importantly, avoiding anything that reminded him of the war that had cost him his squadron and nearly his sanity. "Patch it through," he muttered, taking a sip of the bitter synthetic coffee. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a stern-faced bureaucrat in the pristine uniform of the Galactic Administrative Services. The woman's expression suggested she'd rather be anywhere else in the galaxy. "Commander Jackson Reeves, service number Delta 779 Alpha," she began without preamble. "By order of the Galactic Debt Reconciliation Act, Article 15, you are hereby notified of a life debt claim filed against your service record." Jackson nearly choked on his coffee. "Life debt? I don't owe anyone anything." "The claim originates from the Altarian Defense Coalition, specifically regarding your actions during the evacuation of Research Station Omega-7 in the Kepler system. Records indicate you personally rescued 43 Altarian civilians during the Syndicate assault." The memories hit him like decompression. The burning station, the screaming civilians, the desperate runs through corridors filled with toxic smoke and enemy fire. He'd done what any decent person would do, what his training demanded. Nothing more. "That was my job," he said quietly. "Nevertheless, under Altarian law, a life debt has been declared. As of today, you are assigned 2 Altarian citizens as permanent companions until such time as the debt is considered satisfied." "Assigned?" Jackson stood up so quickly his chair spun backward. "Lady, I don't want—" "The assignment is non-negotiable. Transport vessel Celestial Dawn is requesting docking permission. Please prepare to receive your companions." The transmission cut off, leaving Jackson staring at the empty hologram projector. He turned to address Nexus, knowing the AI would be listening. "Tell me you can override this somehow." "I'm afraid not, Commander. Galactic debt law supersedes individual preferences. On the bright side, you'll have company for the first time in 3 years. "That's not a bright side, Nexus." 20 minutes later, the docking clamps engaged with a resonant clang that seemed to echo through the ship's hull. Jackson stood in the cramped airlock chamber, arms crossed, trying to project an image of someone who definitely did not want whatever was about to walk through that door. The outer door hissed open, and 2 figures stepped aboard the Stellar Wanderer. They were unmistakably Altarian. Tall, elegant, with the characteristic pointed ears and luminescent skin that seemed to glow softly in the ship's artificial lighting. But where most Altarians he'd encountered during the war had been refugees or scientists, these 2 moved with a fluid grace that spoke of extensive training. The first one had deep purple eyes that seemed to catalog everything in the airlock, within seconds. Her silver hair was pulled back in a practical braid, and she wore a form-fitting jumpsuit that managed to look both functional and somehow regal. She stepped forward with military precision. "Commander Reeves," she said, her voice carrying a slight musical accent. "I am Zara of House Moon Whisper. This is my twin sister Luna. The second Altarian was clearly cut from different cloth. Her golden eyes sparkled with barely contained mischief, and her hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders. Where Zara projected controlled competence, Luna radiated cheerful energy that seemed at odds with the formal nature of their arrival. "Hi," Luna said, waving enthusiastically. "Love what you've done with the place. Very minimalist. Is that intentional, or did you just run out of decorating budget?" Jackson blinked. "Are you seriously making jokes right now?" "Always," she replied, with a grin. "Life's too short to take everything seriously, even when you're legally bound to someone for the rest of your natural existence." Zara shot her sister a warning look before turning back to Jackson. "We understand this situation is unusual. We've brought our own supplies and equipment. We won't be a burden." "You're already a burden," Jackson said flatly. "I don't need companions, assistants, or whatever this is supposed to be. I work alone." "Not anymore," Zara replied with the same calm precision. "The life debt is clear. We are bound to serve until the debt is satisfied." "And how exactly is it satisfied?" Luna and Zara exchanged a glance that lasted just a moment, too. "Long. That's somewhat open to interpretation," Luna said eventually. "Meaning?" "Meaning," Zara said carefully, "the debt is considered satisfied when the debtor no longer requires protection or assistance, as determined by Altarian custom and law. It could be days, years, or, Jackson prompted, though he suspected he didn't want to know. "Or until death," Luna finished cheerfully. "But let's not dwell on that part. I brought homemade quantum cookies." She produced a small container from her pack and offered it to him. Despite himself, Jackson found his stomach growling. He'd been living on ration bars and synthetic coffee for weeks. "They're not poisoned," Luna added helpfully. "That would be counterproductive to the whole serving you faithfully thing." Jackson reluctantly took one of the cookies. It actually tasted incredible. Sweet, and somehow sparkling on his tongue in a way that regular food never did. "Altarian baking techniques," Zara explained, noting his surprised expression. "Luna has always been gifted in the culinary arts." "Among other things," Luna added with a wink that made Jackson inexplicably uncomfortable. Nexus chose that moment to chime in. "Commander, I prepared quarters for your guests. Bay 7 has been converted to accommodate Altarian sleep cycles and dietary requirements. You did what now?" Jackson turned toward the nearest speaker. "I took the initiative. Seemed logical given the circumstances. Also, I should mention that Altarian law requires their living space to be within 50 meters of their assigned debtor at all times." 50 meters? Jackson felt a headache building behind his eyes. "This ship is barely 80 meters bow to stern." "I'm aware of the spatial limitations," Nexus replied with what sounded suspiciously like amusement. "I've also updated the ship's registry to reflect the new crew complement. You're now listed as Captain Reeves, with Zara and Luna as cultural liaisons." "Cultural liaisons? It sounds better than legally mandated life debt servants," Luna pointed out. "Plus, we actually know a lot about cultural stuff. I can make 17 different types of breakfast pastries from 12 different planetary systems. And I have extensive training in tactical analysis, systems engineering, and diplomatic protocols," Zara added. "We're not just decorative." Jackson looked back and forth between them, trying to process this sudden upheaval of his carefully ordered solitary existence. Zara stood with perfect posture, radiating competence and control. Luna was already exploring the airlock chamber with obvious curiosity, running her fingers along the wall panels like she was reading something in their surface. "This is insane," he muttered. "Technically, it's legal," Zara corrected. "Insanity would be trying to fight Galactic Administrative Services. Trust me," Luna called from where she was examining the inner airlock door. "We tried to find loopholes. Zara spent 3 weeks going through legal databases. The debt is ironclad. So you're stuck with us, Zara concluded. But we prefer to think of it as an opportunity for mutual growth and understanding. I prefer to think of it as a cosmic joke at my expense. Nexus, Luna said suddenly. Can you show us to our quarters? I want to unpack my tea collection. You have a tea collection? Jackson asked. 47 varieties from 18 different worlds, she replied proudly. Wait until you try Rigelian Sunset Blend. It's technically mildly psychoactive, but in a fun way. As Nexus guided the twins toward their new living space, Jackson remained in the airlock, staring at the closed outer door that represented his last connection to his former life of blissful solitude. Commander? Zara paused at the inner door. For what it's worth, we didn't choose this either, but we're here now, and we intend to honor the debt with dignity and purpose. She followed her sister into the ship, leaving Jackson alone with his thoughts and the growing realization that his quiet, uncomplicated life had just become infinitely more complex. Nexus, he said finally. Yes, Commander. Set course for the neutral zone. If I'm going to be stuck with companions, I might as well find us some paying cargo. Already done. I've accepted a contract to transport medical supplies to Colony 7. Departure in 30 minutes. Jackson sighed and headed toward the bridge, trying to ignore the sound of laughter coming from the crew quarters. For the first time in years, the Stellar Wanderer felt alive with something other than the hum of engines and the echo of his own footsteps. He wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not. Hearts in zero gravity. 3 weeks into their unlikely partnership, the Stellar Wanderer had become something Jackson barely recognized. Gone was the sterile, echoing silence he'd grown accustomed to. In its place was the constant hum of conversation, the sound of Luna's laughter echoing through the corridors, and the gentle chime of Zara's meditation bells at dawn and dusk. The ship itself had been transformed. Luna had somehow convinced Nexus to adjust the lighting systems to cycle through natural planetary rhythms, creating artificial sunrises and sunsets that made the cramped interior feel more alive. Zara had reorganized the cargo manifest system, with ruthless efficiency, increasing their profit margins by 30% through optimal route planning. Jackson found himself watching them work with a mixture of admiration and confusion. Zara approached every task with methodical precision, her purple eyes intense with concentration as she calculated hyperspace vectors or negotiated with port authorities. Luna attacked problems with creative chaos, somehow making their ancient food synthesizer produce meals that actually tasted like food instead of processed disappointment. But it was the small moments that caught him off guard. The way Zara's expression softened when she thought no one was looking, or how Luna would hum ancient Altarian melodies while she worked, filling the ship with music he'd never heard but somehow found comforting. Commander, Nexus interrupted his thoughts as he sat on the bridge, ostensibly reviewing supply manifests, but actually watching Luna attempt to teach their cargo haulers' mechanical arms to dance. We have an incoming priority transmission. Berkai. Holographic display materialized, revealing a face Jackson hadn't seen in 2 years. Captain Nora Sterling, his former commanding officer. Her stern features were as sharp as ever, but her eyes held a warmth that had always been reserved for her former pilots. Jax, she said, using the nickname only she was allowed to get away with. You look like hell. Nice to see you too, Captain. What's the occasion? I need a favor. There's a situation developing in the Vega system. Nothing military, just some diplomatic complications that could use a steady hand in a ship that's not officially on any government registry. Jackson felt the familiar tightness in his chest that came with anything related to his military past. I'm out of that business, Nora. I run cargo now. I know, and I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. 3 days, Jax. Good pay. And you'd be helping prevent a trade war that could destabilize half the outer colonies. Before Jackson could respond, Zara appeared at his shoulder, having approached with her characteristic silent grace. "Captain Sterling," she said formally. "It's an honor." Nora's eyebrows rose slightly. "And you are?" "Zara of House Moonwhisper, cultural liaison aboard the Stellar Wanderer." "Cultural liaison?" Nora's eyes flicked to Jackson with obvious amusement. "You've been holding out on me, Jax. Last I heard, you were determined to work alone, until the heat death of the universe." "It's complicated," Jackson muttered. Luna's voice carried from the cargo bay, singing something in musical Altarian that made even Nexus's speakers sound melodic as the AI translated and transmitted the harmony throughout the ship. "Apparently," Nora said dryly. "Look, I'll sweeten the deal. 50,000 credits plus a bonus if you can wrap this up quickly. The situation involves some Altarian trade delegates who've been stonewalling negotiations for weeks. Having actual Altarians on your crew might be exactly what we need." Zara's expression remained carefully neutral, but Jackson caught the slight tension in her shoulders. "What kind of trade negotiations?" "Nothing dramatic," Nora assured her. "The Altarian Confederation wants to establish a new shipping route through Vega space, but the local authorities are demanding cultural guarantees they don't understand. It's all posturing and paperwork, but it needs someone with the right touch." "We'll do it," Zara said before Jackson could respond. He turned to stare at her. "We will. The Altarian Confederation is our government, Commander. If they need assistance, we're obligated to provide it. Besides," she added quietly, "it might be an opportunity to clarify certain aspects of our current arrangement." There was something in her tone that made Jackson's pulse quicken, though he couldn't say why. 2 days later, they were docked at Vega Station, a sprawling commercial hub that looked like someone had taken a dozen different architectural styles and welded them together with hope and determination. The diplomatic section was a maze of conference rooms and waiting areas filled with beings from a dozen different species, all looking varying degrees of frustrated. Ambassador Keth Voss, the Altarian delegation leader, was a tall, austere man, whose silver robes seemed to shimmer with their own light. He greeted Zara and Luna with formal courtesy, but his eyes held a sharpness that made Jackson immediately wary. "Sisters," he said in accented standard, "it is unexpected to find you here, serving as crew aboard a human vessel." "We serve where honor demands," Zara replied carefully. "Indeed." Voss's gaze shifted to Jackson. "Commander Reeves, your reputation precedes you, the hero of Kepler Station." "I'm just a cargo hauler now," Jackson said flatly. "How modest, and how convenient that you should arrive just as these negotiations reach a crucial phase." Voss smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Perhaps we should discuss the terms of your sister's continued service." Luna stepped forward, her usual cheerfulness replaced by something harder. "Our service terms are already established, Ambassador, by law and custom." "Customs change, young one. Laws can be reinterpreted." Voss produced a data pad from his robes. "I have here a formal petition for reassignment. The Confederation has need of skilled operatives for more appropriate duties." Jackson felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What kind of duties?" "Intelligence gathering, diplomatic security, tasks more suited to their training and abilities than whatever this is." Voss gestured dismissively at the three of them. "This is service with honor," Zara said, her voice steady, but her hands clenched at her sides. "This is waste," Voss countered. "Two of our finest operatives playing house with a damaged human who wants nothing more than to hide from his past." The words hit Jackson like a physical blow, not least because they carried enough truth to sting. But before he could respond, Luna stepped between them, her golden eyes blazing. "You will not speak of him that way," she said, her voice carrying an edge Jackson had never heard before. "Commander Reeves is a man of honor who saved our people when he had no obligation to do so. He deserves respect, not your disdain." And you, sister, deserve better than to waste your talents as a glorified servant. I am exactly where I choose to be, Luna replied firmly. Voss's expression hardened. Then you choose poorly, both of you. He turned to Jackson. Commander, surely, you can see that this arrangement serves no one's interests. These women have families, futures, lives beyond this obligation. Jackson looked at Zara and Luna, seeing them as if for the first time. They were brilliant, capable, beautiful, everything he wasn't. What right did he have to keep them bound to his broken existence? Maybe he's right, Jackson said quietly. Zara's head snapped toward him, her purple eyes wide with shock. Commander? You heard him. You have lives, families. I never asked for this arrangement, and you shouldn't have to suffer for my choices. Suffer? Luna's voice was barely a whisper. Excellent, Voss said, producing an official-looking document. The reassignment papers simply require your signature, Commander, acknowledging the release of the life debt obligation. Jackson reached for the stylus, but Zara's hand caught his wrist. Don't, she said urgently. Please, not like this. Why not? He's right. You deserve better than babysitting a washed-up pilot who can't even sleep through the night without nightmares. Because, Zara said, her controlled facade finally cracking. In 3 weeks, you've given us something we never had in years of government service. You've given us choice, agency, the freedom to be ourselves instead of perfect Altarian operatives. And because, Luna added, stepping closer. Somewhere along the way, this stopped being about duty and became about something else entirely. Jackson stared at them both, seeing the truth in their eyes. A truth he'd been too afraid to acknowledge in himself. The debt isn't satisfied, is it? He asked quietly. No, Zara admitted. It may never be. The law is deliberately vague because it's not really about obligation. It's about choice. We can choose to stay or choose to go, but the choice has to be genuine. And what do you choose? Luna smiled, the expression transforming her entire face. We choose you, Jackson Reeves, if you'll have us. Voss made a disgusted sound. This is ridiculous. Sentiment over duty, chaos over order. The Confederation will not stand for the Confederation, said a new voice from the doorway. Will respect the ancient laws it claims to uphold. Captain Sterling entered the conference room with her characteristic military bearing, but she was followed by someone Jackson didn't recognize. An elderly Altarian woman whose presence seemed to command immediate respect from everyone in the room, including Voss. Elder Moon Whisper, Voss said, bowing low. Grandmother, Zara and Luna said in unison, their voices filled with surprise and affection. The elderly woman approached Jackson with a knowing smile. So you are the human who has captured my granddaughter's hearts. What? The life debt, Commander Reeves, is satisfied when the debtor no longer needs protection. But there are many kinds of protection: physical, emotional, spiritual. My granddaughters have found in you someone worth protecting, and you have found in them something worth living for again. She turned to Voss with steel in her ancient eyes. The debt is satisfied not by separation, but by choice freely made. They choose to stay. He chooses to let them. The law is fulfilled. Voss sputtered protests, but Elder Moon Whisper raised a hand that silenced him instantly. The negotiations will proceed, she continued. The trade route will be established, and my granddaughters will continue to serve with honor, not as bound servants, but as free agents choosing their own path. Later, as they walked through the station's observation deck, Jackson found himself flanked by Zara and Luna, watching the stars wheel slowly past the massive viewport. So, he said finally, no more life debt. No more life debt, Zara confirmed. Just us, Luna added, choosing to be here. And you're sure? About choosing me, I mean. I'm not exactly the easiest person to be around. Zara took his left hand, her fingers intertwining with his. We're sure. Luna took his right hand, squeezing gently. Besides, easy is boring. We prefer complicated. Complicated, Jackson repeated, testing the word. For the first time in years, it didn't sound like a curse. Just one question, Luna said with a mischievous grin. Are we staying in separate quarters on the ship, or— Luna! Zara protested, though her cheeks flushed purple. Jackson laughed. Actually, laughed for the first time since before the war. I think, he said, we'll figure it out as we go. And as the stellar wanderer prepared for departure, carrying its crew of 3 toward whatever adventures awaited them among the stars, Jackson realized that sometimes the best things in life were the ones you never asked for but couldn't imagine living without. The galaxy suddenly seemed full of possibilities.